century, I lived among a family of Bigfoot in the Olympic Mountains. And what they finally revealed to me about why they hide from humans is a truth so devastating. It's kept me silent for 50 years. Some people might call me crazy for admitting this publicly, but I'm 73 years old now, and if I don't tell this story, it dies with me. My name is Robert Thatcher. I spent my career as a wildlife photographer and wilderness survival instructor in Washington State. This is my story, and I need to tell it exactly as it happened, because what I learned changes everything we think we know about these beings and about ourselves. The summer of 1974 painted the forests of the Pacific Northwest in shades of emerald and gold. I was 23 years old back then, fresh out of the photography program at the University of Washington, eager to make my mark documenting the wild ecosystems of the Olympic Peninsula. I'd grown up in Seattle, spending every summer camping with my grandmother, who was half Lummi. She told me stories around campfires about the Tsemekwes, the wild people of the woods who avoided human contact. I'd always assumed they were just legends, cautionary tales to keep children from wandering too far from camp. I was about to learn how wrong I was. The crisp morning air of August 14, 1974, carried the scent of wet cedar and decomposing moss as I woke in my tent, 12 miles from the nearest marked trail in the Hoh rainforest region. It was 4:47 in the morning, that peculiar pre-dawn moment when the world exists in shades of gray and blue. I'd been camping alone for 6 days, working on a documentary photography project about Pacific Northwest wildlife for my senior portfolio. My Nikon F2 with a 300mm telephoto lens sat on a fallen log outside my tent, positioned to capture deer that frequented the small clearing where I'd made camp. Something woke me. Not the usual sounds of the forest, not the rustle of a raccoon, or the distant call of an owl. This was different. Heavy, deliberate footfalls. Bipedal. My first thought was another hiker, though that seemed impossible given my remote location. Then I heard something that made my breath catch. A soft, curious vocalization. Not quite a grunt, not quite a hum, but something in between. Intelligent. Questioning. Very slowly, trying not to make any sudden movements, I unzipped my tent. My heart hammered against my ribs as I peered out into the dim morning light. What I saw made every rational thought in my brain simply stop functioning. At the edge of my clearing, perhaps 30 yards away, stood a figure that couldn't exist. It was massive, easily 7.5 feet tall, with shoulders that must have been 4 feet across. Its entire body was covered in reddish-brown hair that looked almost copper in the early light, longer around the shoulders and head, shorter on the powerful arms. But what froze me completely was what it was doing. The creature was examining my camera equipment. Not destroying it, not fleeing from it, but studying it. Its enormous hands, easily twice the size of mine, held my telephoto lens with surprising delicacy. I could see thick fingers, surprisingly human-like, turning the lens carefully, bringing it close to its face as if trying to understand its purpose. The movement was methodical, curious, gentle. This wasn't an animal investigating a strange object. This was intelligence encountering unfamiliar technology. I must have made some small sound, because suddenly those dark, intelligent eyes locked onto mine. We stared at each other across that clearing for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 45 seconds. I could see details I'd never imagined. A broad, flat nose, a heavy brow ridge that somehow didn't look primitive, but rather noble. Lips more pronounced than a gorilla's, but less than a human's. And those eyes. Dark brown, alert, filled with an awareness that made my chest tighten. This wasn't a dumb animal. This was a thinking being. My photographer's instinct screamed at me to reach for my backup camera inside the tent to document this impossible moment. But something deeper stopped me. Some intuition that reaching for a camera would break whatever fragile moment we were sharing. Instead, I slowly raised both hands, palms out, showing I was unarmed. My voice cracked when I spoke. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's head tilted slightly, reminding me oddly of the way my grandmother's dog used to cock its head when trying to understand human speech. Then, moving with deliberate slowness, it carefully set my limbs back down on the log. Not dropped, not tossed aside, but placed with care. It took 3 steps forward, closing the distance to about 20 yards, and I could hear the soft thud of its feet on the forest floor, see the way morning mist swirled around its legs. Then, it did something that changed my life forever. It reached down to the ground and picked up something I hadn't noticed. A perfect blue jay feather, vibrant even in the dim light. With a movement that was clearly deliberate, it placed the feather on a flat stone between us. Then it looked at me, made a soft clicking sound deep in its throat, and slowly backed away into the forest. Not fleeing, not running, just withdrawing with dignity, maintaining eye contact until the trees and undergrowth swallowed its massive form. I sat there on the floor of my tent for 20 minutes, shaking, my scientific mind trying desperately to rationalize what had just happened. But there was no rationalization possible. I walked to that stone and picked up the feather. It was real, perfect, deliberately placed. This had been communication, gift exchange, an attempt at contact from a being that wasn't supposed to exist. I made a decision in that moment that would define the next 50 years of my life. I would return to this spot every day. I would try to understand. I would document, not with my camera, but with my presence, my patience, my respect. I thought that first meeting was the end of something, the conclusion of a strange encounter I'd spent years trying to understand. It was actually the beginning. Over the next 6 months, I would learn to communicate with them. Over the next 5 years, I would be accepted into their world. And 23 years later, I would learn the devastating truth about why they hide from us with such determination. That truth would break my heart and burden me with a secret I've carried ever since. Until now. I returned to that clearing 2 days later, my pack filled not with camera equipment but with objects I hoped might continue our strange conversation. A smooth river stone with bands of white quartz running through it. A cluster of wild roses I'd found blooming near a creek. A piece of blue glass, worn smooth by water and time. I felt ridiculous laying these offerings on the same flat stone where the feather had been placed. But something told me that beauty mattered to this being, that aesthetics were a language we might share. The pattern established itself over the next 6 months with a consistency that felt almost ritualistic. Every 2 to 3 days, I'd hike the 12 miles into the forest, always arriving in early morning when the mist still clung to the ground. I'd leave my offerings and retreat to a respectful distance, maybe 50 yards back, where I'd sit quietly and wait, sometimes for hours. The creature I'd begun thinking of privately as Thomas, though I never spoke the name aloud, would appear at unpredictable intervals. Sometimes within an hour, sometimes not until I'd nearly given up and started the long hike back. But he always came, and he always left something in return. A branch with perfectly ripe huckleberries still attached. A piece of driftwood, worn into an almost sculptural shape by water and time. Once, a collection of small pine cones arranged in a spiral pattern that seemed too deliberate to be accidental. We were speaking to each other across an impossible divide, using objects as words, beauty as grammar. By October, the distance between us had shrunk from 30 yards to 20, then to 15. He no longer retreated immediately after leaving his gifts. He'd watch me, head tilted in that curious way, as if trying to solve the puzzle of what I was. On November 3rd, 1974, everything shifted. I'd just placed my offering, a handful of roasted hazelnuts in a small cloth bag, when I heard him approaching through the underbrush. But this time, instead of the usual heavy footfalls, he made a new sound. A series of soft clicking noises, rhythmic and intentional, almost like a language. My heart raced as I realized what he was doing. He was trying to communicate vocally, to see if I could understand or respond. I felt absurd, but I tried clicking back, mimicking the pattern as best I could. Tomas stopped moving. The forest went silent. Then he repeated the sounds, slower this time, as if teaching. I clicked back again, and I swear I saw something in his eyes that looked like satisfaction, maybe even pleasure. By mid-December, as the first snows began dusting the high branches, we'd established a basic vocabulary of sounds and gestures. A low hum, followed by a tap on his chest, seemed to mean acknowledgement or greeting. A particular series of clicks indicated interest or curiosity. I started bringing food as well as objects, and on December 18th, Thomas brought me a large handful of huckleberries, watching intently as I ate them to show they were safe. The berries were sweet and perfect, and in that moment of shared sustenance, something fundamental shifted between us. We weren't just curious about each other anymore. We were becoming something like friends. The heavy snows of January 1975 should have ended our meetings, but I couldn't stay away. I tracked him one morning through fresh powder, following the unmistakable prints, each one 19 inches long and 8 inches wide, sinking deep into the snow. The trail led me to a sheltered area beneath an overhang of ancient cedars, where the ground was relatively dry. And there, partially hidden behind a massive trunk, I saw not one figure but two. The second was smaller, perhaps 7 feet tall, with fur that was more brown than red. Female, I realized, watching the way Thomas positioned himself slightly in front of her, protective but not aggressive. They didn't flee. Tomas made our greeting sound, that low hum and chest tap, and gestured toward the female with a movement that seemed unmistakably like an introduction. I responded with the same greeting, moving slowly, keeping my hands visible. The female, I began thinking of her as Kaya, watched me with eyes that held wariness, but also intelligence and curiosity. Over the next hour, through a painstaking process of repetition and context, Tomas taught me something profound. He touched a cedar tree and made a specific sound, a rising tone that ended in a soft grunt. Then he pointed to another cedar and repeated it. Same sound, same gesture. He was showing me that they had names for things, that their vocalizations weren't just emotional expressions, but actual language with consistent meaning. I spent the rest of that winter and into spring learning their language the way a child learns to speak, through immersion, repetition, and inevitable mistakes. I learned approximately 15 distinct vocalizations and their associated meanings. A sharp exhale through the nose meant caution or warning. A soft trilling sound indicated contentment or approval. A deep rumble from the chest was used for emphasis or strong agreement. Combined with gestures, touching specific objects or parts of the body, pointing to directions or demonstrating actions, we could convey surprisingly complex ideas. It was crude compared to human language, but it was communication. Real, intentional, mutual understanding. In April 1975, as the snow melted and exposed the winter-killed undergrowth, Tomas did something unprecedented. He approached me in our usual clearing, but instead of the typical exchange, he made an urgent series of sounds I'd come to understand meant follow me. Then he turned and began walking deeper into the forest, looking back frequently to ensure I was keeping pace. My pulse quickened. This was different. This was an invitation into his world. We hiked for nearly 90 minutes, climbing steadily through terrain that grew increasingly remote and difficult. Tomas moved with effortless grace, despite his size, his feet finding purchase on slopes I struggled to navigate. The forest here was older, darker, the canopy so thick that only scattered shafts of sunlight penetrated to the moss-covered floor. We crossed two small streams, climbed over fallen giants that must have been centuries old, and finally descended into a hidden valley I never would have found on my own. And there, sheltered by the surrounding ridges and screened by dense vegetation, I saw structures. Not caves or random shelters, but deliberately constructed dwellings. Frameworks of branches woven together and covered with bark and moss, creating waterproof enclosures. Food storage areas where dried berries and smoked fish hung from racks made of bent saplings. A communal space in the center where the ground had been cleared and smoothed. This wasn't just a creature making do in the wilderness. This was a culture, a society. As Tomas led me into the valley, figures emerged from the structures in the surrounding forest. 6, maybe 7 individuals of varying sizes. Some tall and broad like Tomas, others smaller and more slender like Kea. One was clearly very young, perhaps equivalent to a human child of 8 or 9, staying close to what I assumed was its mother. They gathered at a distance, watching me with expressions I was learning to read. Curiosity mixed with caution. Intelligence assessing threat. One elder, massive and ancient with gray streaking through his dark fur and standing at least 8.5 feet tall, moved forward with slow deliberation. The elder approached to within 10 feet of me, closer than any besides Thomas had ever been. His eyes, deep brown and surrounded by weathered skin, studied me with an intensity that made me feel completely transparent. He made a complex series of vocalizations, longer and more intricate than anything I'd heard before. Tomas responded with his own sounds, gesturing toward me, then toward the valley, then back to me. I realized I was watching a debate, maybe even a judgment. The elder was deciding whether this human could be trusted, whether my presence here was permission or violation. I did the only thing that felt right. I unslung my small day pack and pulled out my backup camera, a Pentax Spotmatic I'd brought out of habit. I held it up so the elder could see it clearly, then slowly, deliberately, I set it on the ground and stepped away from it. "I'm not here to expose you," I said quietly, knowing he couldn't understand my words, but hoping he'd grasp my intent. "I'm here to understand, to learn, to be trusted." The elder stared at the camera, then at me. Moments stretched into what felt like minutes. Then he made a sound, short and decisive, almost like a grunt of approval. Thomas's posture relaxed immediately, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. The elder had made his decision. I could stay. Over the next 5 years, I lived 2 completely separate lives. In the world, everyone could see I was Robert Thatcher, wildlife photographer. I published pictures of elk and black bears in nature magazines. I led wilderness survival courses for outdoor enthusiasts, teaching them how to read moss patterns and purify water. I had a small apartment in Port Angeles, and a truck that always smelled like pine needles and wet canvas. But that was just the surface, the mask I wore so no one would ask questions. My real life happened in that hidden valley, 3 to 4 months out of every year. I told my colleagues I was on solo photography expeditions in remote areas, that I needed isolation to capture the perfect shots. They believed me because photographers are expected to be eccentric, to disappear into the wilderness for weeks at a time. What they didn't know was that I'd stopped photographing anything that mattered. The images that would have made my career, the documentation that would have changed science forever, I kept locked away in my memory because I'd made a promise to beings who had every reason not to trust humans. By 1980, I could communicate in their language with reasonable fluency. Not perfectly. I'd never mastered the subtle tonal variations that seemed to convey emotional nuance, but well enough to discuss immediate needs, to share observations, to ask and answer basic questions. I learned that they had approximately 60 distinct vocalizations, each with specific meaning, and when combined with gestures and context, they could express surprisingly complex ideas. Tomas taught me to read their trail markers, broken branches arranged in specific patterns that indicated direction or warned of danger. He showed me how they used scent markers, rubbing specific plants on trees to communicate territorial boundaries or meeting places. They had a system, a methodology for existing invisibly in a world that was steadily encroaching on their territory. I witnessed their social structure unfold like a slow revelation. The families were led by elder females, wise and weathered, who made decisions about when to move camps, where to forage, how to respond to threats. The males, like Tomas, served as protectors and scouts, ranging far from the valley to monitor human activity and assess danger. Children were raised communally, with all adults participating in their education and care. I watched them teach the young ones which plants were medicinal and which were poisonous, demonstrating with careful patience. I saw them show children how to catch fish with their hands in the cold streams, how to move silently through dense brush, how to read weather patterns in the clouds and wind. In the summer of 1976, I witnessed something that changed my understanding completely. An infant had been born that spring, and on a warm June evening, the community gathered for what I can only describe as a naming ceremony. The elders formed a circle around the mother and child, and one by one, they vocalized different sounds. The mother would hold her baby close and repeat certain sounds, rejecting others with a shake of her head. After nearly an hour, she settled on a specific vocalization, a rising tone followed by 2 soft clicks. The community repeated it in unison, and the baby had a name. They weren't just intelligent. They had rituals, traditions, culture. But even as I marveled at their society, I began to notice something troubling. The community was afraid, and that fear was growing. Scouts would return from their ranging expeditions agitated, making sharp warning sounds and gesturing urgently. The sentries who watched the valley entrances changed more frequently, staying alert for longer periods. Children who had once played freely in the clearing were kept closer to the shelters, their movements restricted. By 1977, the anxiety in the valley was like a physical presence, something you could feel pressing down on everyone. Tomas showed me why. He led me to a cave at the edge of their territory where they stored things they'd collected, evidence of the encroaching human world. Cigarette butts arranged in rows by date, showing the progression of campers getting closer to the valley. Bottle caps and candy wrappers, each one representing an incursion. Spent bullet casings from hunters, dozens of them, collected over years. But most disturbing were the marks on trees, careful scratches they'd made to track human proximity. In 1975, the nearest regular human activity had been marked at a distance I estimated to be about 6 miles from the valley. By 1978, new marks showed humans within 3 miles. By 1979, A logging road had pushed to within 2 miles, and the sound of chainsaws sometimes echoed through the forest, sending waves of panic through the community. I watched them hold what I can only describe as council meetings, urgent gatherings where elders and adults debated in rapid, complex vocalizations I couldn't fully follow. I caught words I knew: danger, move, children, stay, but the full meaning escaped me. Tomas's mate Kaya kept their young ones, there were 2 now, born in 1977 and 1979, constantly within arm's reach. The joy I'd seen in the valley during my first visits was being replaced by something else: vigilance, exhaustion, fear. One autumn day in 1979, the gray-haired elder who had first judged me worthy gestured for me to follow him. We walked for nearly an hour to a part of their territory I'd never seen, a dense thicket that opened into a small clearing. There, hidden under a rock overhang, was a cache of objects that made my blood run cold. Rusted, leg-holder traps, some still stained with old blood. Lengths of chain and rope, weathered but still strong. A hunting knife with a broken blade. And most chilling, a collection of bullets, different calibers and ages. Some so old they'd turned green with corrosion. The elder made a series of sounds and gestures, slowly, so I would understand. He pointed to the traps, then mimicked being caught, falling, pain. He showed me running, hiding, escaping. Then he held up his massive hand and closed his fingers one by one, over and over, indicating many. Many caught, many hurt, many killed. He picked up one of the oldest bullets and made a gesture I'd learned meant long ago, then picked up a shinier one and tapped his chest. Recently. Still happening. Still dangerous. I looked at that collection of weapons and implements, at the care with which they'd been preserved and hidden, and I finally understood. This wasn't paranoia or instinctive animal wariness. This was learned behavior, trauma passed down through generations. They'd been collecting evidence of human violence for decades, maybe longer, cataloging every close call, every attack, every reason they had to hide. They weren't afraid of humans in the abstract. They were afraid because they knew exactly what we were capable of doing to them. The elder placed one enormous hand on a nearby cedar tree, then placed the other on his chest, the gesture for home and self that Thomas had taught me years ago. Then he pointed to the cache of weapons and shook his head slowly. He was telling me that humans brought these things, that these objects of pain and death came with my kind. And beneath that message was a question, an accusation, maybe even a plea. Why? Why do you hunt us? Why can't you leave us in peace? I had no answer for him. I stood in that clearing, looking at the evidence of my species' cruelty, and felt shame burn through me like acid. These beings had shown me nothing but patience and trust. They'd welcomed me into their world despite every reason not to, and all they wanted was to be left alone, to raise their children and live their lives in the shrinking wilderness we hadn't yet destroyed. But we couldn't even give them that. As we walked back to the valley, I noticed how Tomas moved differently now, his head swiveling constantly to scan for threats, his body tense even in his own territory. This wasn't the curious, gentle being I'd first met 5 years ago. This was someone living under constant stress, always waiting for the next threat. I realized then that I wasn't just documenting a hidden species. I was watching a people being slowly pushed toward extinction, and I still didn't know the full truth of why. That truth was coming, though I didn't know it yet. And when it finally arrived in 1997, it would shatter everything I thought I understood about the relationship between humans and these magnificent doomed beings. September 1997 arrived with the first hints of autumn turning the high leaves gold. was 46 years old, carrying 23 years of secrets in my chest like stones. I'd been visiting the valley less frequently as my body aged, and my survival instruction business demanded more time. But I still made the journey 3 or 4 times a year, always bringing supplies they couldn't make themselves. Metal fish hooks, salt, antibacterial ointment I'd carefully repackaged to hide its origin. Tomas was graying now, silver threading through the reddish fur around his face, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. That September morning, he approached me differently. His posture was formal, rigid, the way I'd seen the elders move during important ceremonies. He made a series of vocalizations I'd never heard before, complex and layered, almost musical in their structure. Then he gestured with both hands, the sign for "follow me," but repeated it 3 times with an intensity that made my stomach clench. "There is something you must see," his gestures conveyed. "You have earned this." The weight of those words, spoken in sounds and movements, pressed down on me like physical force. We walked for 2 days, not the familiar paths to the valley, but routes that climbed steadily upward into remote mountain regions I'd never explored. The gray-furred elder joined us on the morning of the 2nd day, moving slowly but with determined purpose despite his obvious age. Neither of them spoke beyond occasional directional sounds. The silence felt heavy, ritualistic, like we were approaching something sacred or terrible or both. We traveled along ridgelines where no trails existed, through passes so narrow I had to turn sideways, across slopes where one wrong step would mean a fatal fall. These were paths designed to be invisible from the air, impossible to follow unless you knew exactly where they led. On the afternoon of the 2nd day, we reached a concealed cave entrance high on a mountainside, hidden behind a curtain of hanging moss and ferns. The elder stopped and made a long, low vocalization that sounded like a prayer or an announcement, words spoken to whatever lay inside. Then Tomas lit a branch wrapped with pitch-soaked bark, rare fire they used only when absolutely necessary, and we entered. The cave was small and dry, maybe 15 feet deep, and what I saw in the flickering light made my breath stop. Bones. Carefully arranged remains, skulls and long bones laid out with obvious reverence. But these weren't their dead. The skulls were larger than any I'd seen in the valley, broader and more robust, with heavy brow ridges. I knelt beside them, my hands shaking, and saw what made my stomach turn. Bullet holes. Clean, round perforations in the bone, some in skulls, others in ribs and long bones. Fracture patterns from violent impacts. Cut marks from blades. The elder began to tell a story through gestures and vocalizations I'd learned over 23 years. He showed me other Bigfoot, a different group, different territory. His hands indicated time passing, many seasons, going backward. 1960s, I calculated from his gestures. He showed me hunters, 4 or 5 of them, with guns. Showed me his people trying to flee, being cornered, being shot. His massive hands moved through the air, showing bodies falling, one after another. 23 individuals he conveyed by counting on his fingers twice, then adding more. Families destroyed, children killed alongside parents. He showed me how only 3 escaped, how they ran for days, how they carried this story to other groups as a warning. Then he gestured to the bones around us, explaining how survivors had returned months later to retrieve remains, to bring them to this sacred place. They'd found bullet casings. I saw them scattered among the bones. Brass turned green with age. Found rope, now rotted to fragments. Found evidence that their people had been hunted systematically, deliberately, over several weeks. I picked up one of the skulls with trembling hands. It was smaller than the others, a child's skull with a bullet entry wound at the base. The violence of it, the casual cruelty, made bile rise in my throat. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was a massacre. But there was more. Tomas led me deeper into the cave system, through a narrow passage to a second chamber. More remains, but older. The bones were more degraded, some crumbling to the touch. And here there were artifacts that made everything worse. Newspaper clippings, yellow and brittle, protected in what looked like oiled leather pouches. I carefully unfolded one and read the headline by torchlight. Sasquatch hunt organized in Cascade region. The date was 1947. Below it, another $500 reward for Bigfoot specimen, dead or alive, dated 1943. There were photographs too, old black and white images that had somehow been preserved. Men in hunting gear, grinning at the camera, standing over dark shapes on the ground that my mind didn't want to recognize as bodies. Officials in uniforms with county seals visible on their shoulders. Scientists in white coats. Everyone smiling, proud, like they'd accomplished something worth celebrating instead of committing murder. The elder showed me more. Documents with official stamps, requisition forms from laboratories requesting specimens. Letters between what looked like government agencies discussing management of the Bigfoot problem. They knew, I realized with growing horror. Authorities knew these beings existed, and instead of protecting them, they'd sanctioned hunts, offered bounties, facilitated their killing, and when bodies were obtained, they disappeared into official custody, into military facilities or research institutions, never to be acknowledged publicly. Tomas spread out the newspaper clippings and photographs in chronological order on the cave floor. 1920s, 1940s, 1960s, 1970s. A pattern emerged across decades. Every time sightings increased, organized hunts followed. Every time they were found, they were killed. Each time, survivors fled deeper into shrinking wilderness, and the populations dwindled. The elder held up both hands and counted on his fingers, over and over, showing many. Then he slowly closed his fingers until only a few remained on one hand. From hundreds to dozens, maybe fewer now. They were being exterminated, and the world pretended they didn't exist. The elder led me to a third location. Not a cave, but a sheltered gathering place under a rock overhang. 6 other elders from different groups waited there, ancient Bigfoot who had traveled days to be present. This had been planned, debated, voted on. They'd decided I needed to see, needed to know, needed to carry this truth. Each elder came forward and told their story through the language I'd learned, through gestures and sounds that conveyed suffering I had no words for. Lost families to hunters who tracked them like animals. Children taken alive. Rope marks visible on bones they'd recovered. Evidence of capture in cages. Territories destroyed by logging, roads cutting through migration routes, safe places turned into industrial sites. One elder showed me scars, old bullet wounds that had healed imperfectly, leaving deep grooves in the flesh beneath his fur. He'd survived 3 separate hunting encounters. 3 times humans had tried to kill him. The fear in his eyes was ancient and earned and absolute. They weren't just hiding from us because we were dangerous in the abstract. They were hiding because we had spent more than a century systematically trying to eliminate them. Because every time they revealed themselves, we responded with violence. Because our government knew they existed and had decided the easiest solution was extinction. Because we couldn't tolerate the existence of another intelligent species, so we'd chosen to erase them. I sat on that mountain surrounded by the bones of the innocent, surrounded by evidence of genocide, and wept. Not quiet tears, but deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere primal in my chest. Thomas sat beside me, placed one enormous hand on my shoulder, and made soft sounds of comfort. He forgave me, even though I represented the species that had done this. He trusted me, even though every piece of evidence said he shouldn't. This wasn't cryptozoology or wildlife biology. This was ethnic cleansing, hidden behind deliberate ignorance and official denial. They didn't fear humans because we were predators. They feared us because we'd proven again and again across generations that we would rather destroy them than acknowledge their right to exist. The evidence was undeniable, preserved with care by survivors who needed to remember, who needed future generations to know why they must always hide, always run, always live in fear. I understood then that I could never tell this story publicly, not while any of them remained alive. Proof of their existence would be their death sentence. The same forces that had hunted them for a century would finish the job, would find the last survivors and eliminate them under the banner of science or security or progress. My silence was the only protection I could offer. My secrecy was the only gift that mattered. I returned from that mountain in October 1997, carrying knowledge that felt like poison in my blood. Every interaction with other humans became a performance, a carefully maintained mask hiding what I knew. My wife noticed the change, the way I'd wake from nightmares I couldn't explain, the long silences when she asked about my wilderness trips. We separated in 2002, and though she never knew the real reason, I understood that my secrets had built a wall between us that neither of us could cross. Some truths are too heavy to share, and some promises matter more than marriage. I stopped taking photography assignments. The whole profession felt like a lie now, documenting nature while ignoring the greatest truth hiding in those same forests. Instead, I poured everything into my wilderness survival instruction business, teaching people how to read the land, how to move through forests, how to survive. But my real purpose was protection. Every course I taught gave me legitimate reasons to be in the Olympic backcountry, to monitor activity, to position myself as a guardian between the human world and the valley. Over the next 20 years, I became obsessive about diverting threats. When hikers mentioned planning routes that would take them too close to Bigfoot territory, I'd invent stories about dangerous bear activity, about trails washed out or unstable slopes. I filed official reports with the Park Service claiming wildlife concerns in specific areas, getting trails temporarily closed. I intercepted hunters who'd set up camps within 3 miles of the valley, writing tickets for minor violations, confiscating equipment, threatening legal action when they protested. Some probably thought I was a crazy, territorial old ranger. I didn't care what they thought as long as they left. In 2003, my grandmother died and left me $40,000. I used every cent to buy 40 acres of buffer land adjacent to National Forest, right along one of the approaches to the valley. It bankrupted my savings, but it gave me legal standing to keep people out, to post no trespassing signs, to patrol with authority. My Bigfoot friends never knew about the land purchase, never understood that I traded my financial security for a small barrier between them and discovery. But the world kept pressing in. Every year brought more hikers with GPS units and satellite phones, more helicopter tours offering scenic flights over wilderness, more development creeping closer as logging companies pushed roads deeper into what had been roadless territory. I watched the community shrink from 12 members in 2000 to just 8 by 2018. The gray-furred elder died of old age in 2003, and I helped them carry his body to the sacred caves. Two younger adults left to seek other groups, hoping to find mates and avoid genetic problems. One was killed in a rock slide in 2011. Tomas showed me the location with such profound grief that I stood with him for hours in silence. The only language adequate for that loss was no language at all. Tomas himself was aging rapidly now, his fur more silver than red, his movements slower but still dignified. His daughter, born in 1999, had grown into a strong, cautious adult who watched me with her father's intelligence but her mother, Kaya's, wariness. Another birth in 2004 brought brief hope, but after that, nothing. 8 individuals, no new children, and I could see in their eyes that they understood what I understood. They were dying out not from violence this time, but from simple mathematics. Too few of them, too little genetic diversity, too much pressure from the encroaching human world. Then, March 2019 brought the crisis I'd been dreading. I was in town buying supplies when I saw the notice posted at the ranger station. A mining company had secured permits to survey the Olympic region for lithium deposits. The maps showed their planned survey area, and my stomach dropped. It included the valley and 5 square miles around it. Survey operations would begin in July. Helicopters with ground-penetrating radar, crews with core sampling equipment, roads cut for heavy machinery. There was no way the Bigfoot community could remain hidden through that level of intrusion. I drove the 12 miles to the valley faster than I should have, my truck rattling over rough forest roads, my mind racing through impossible options. When I arrived, I hiked in at nearly a run, despite my 68-year-old knees screaming in protest. I found Thomas near the communal area and spread my topographic maps on the ground, using gestures in our shared language to explain. Danger, I signed. Humans coming. Many humans. Machines. Flying machines. They will find this place. You must leave. The community gathered, as Thomas called them, and I watched a debate unfold that tore my heart. Some wanted to flee immediately, to pack what they could and disappear deeper into the mountains. The remaining elders, both female, wanted to stay. They gestured at the burial grounds, at the sacred spaces, at the structures they'd built over decades. This was their home. How could they abandon it? And Thomas, still a protector despite his age, made fighting gestures. Defend the territory. Stand against the threat. I pleaded with them using every word and gesture I knew. Fighting means exposure. Exposure means death. Your people have survived by hiding. You must hide again now. I showed them the maps, showed them the timeline. July was only 4 months away, and made them understand that this wasn't a threat they could wait out or avoid. The mining survey would happen. The valley would be discovered. Their only choice was to leave before that happened. The elder matriarch finally made the decision. A complex vocalization that meant acceptance of necessity. They would go. But where? I could see the question in all their eyes. Where was left? Every piece of true wilderness in Washington was either protected and therefore heavily monitored or threatened by development. They'd been pushed into this valley 40 years ago. There was nowhere left to be pushed. I spent the next month in frantic research, calling in favors from old contacts, studying maps until my eyes burned, following every lead. Finally, I found a possibility. A remote section of British Columbia, part of traditional First Nations territory that had been set aside for conservation. Heavily protected, rarely visited, with the kind of old-growth forest and terrain the Bigfoot needed. But accessing it required navigating complicated Canadian land use laws and Indigenous sovereignty issues. I reached out to a First Nations elder I'd met years ago through my survival instruction work. a man named William who understood the value of keeping secrets. I couldn't tell him everything, but I told him enough. I needed long-term exclusive access to a remote piece of territory for a private wildlife research project. Very private, very exclusive. He studied me for a long moment during our phone call, and I think he understood there was more to the story, but he asked no questions. For $180,000, everything I had left in retirement savings, he arranged the legal framework. 5-year renewable lease, no oversight required. Complete autonomy. In May 2019, I brought Thomas and 2 others to scout the British Columbia location. We drove back roads for 2 days, then hiked for 3 more through wilderness that felt like stepping backward in time. The territory was good, similar enough to their Washington home that they recognized edible plants, water sources, shelter locations. Thomas stood on a ridge looking out over forested valleys and made a sound I'd learned meant acceptance, tinged with sadness. This could be home, but it would never be home. June 2019 became a blur of logistics and heartbreak. I helped them plan the migration route, 300 miles through wilderness, avoiding roads and towns, moving only at night in areas where detection was possible. I cached supplies along the route, stashing food and emergency equipment in locations only they would find. I ran interference with Canadian border authorities, filing paperwork for my research project that gave me legitimate reasons to cross repeatedly. On July the 2nd, 3 days before the mining survey was scheduled to begin, I met them one final time in the valley they were abandoning. Everything had been dismantled, all evidence of their presence erased. The structures were torn down, the communal areas scattered with debris to look natural. They'd emptied the sacred caves, carrying their ancestors' bones with them for reburial in their new home. 8 individuals stood before me. Everything they owned carried in woven packs or wrapped in hides. Thomas approached me alone. He was 60-something in their years, ancient by their standards, gray and weathered but still standing tall. He performed a ritual I'd seen only a handful of times, a formal goodbye between elders. He placed one massive hand over my heart and held it there for a long moment, his palm warm through my shirt. Then he made my name sound, the specific vocalization they'd given me in 1975, the sound that meant me in their language. I vocalized his name back, my voice cracking. Then they walked into the forest, single file, moving with the ghost-like silence that had kept them alive for generations. I watched until the trees swallowed them, 8 shadows becoming part of the green dusk. I was 68 years old, my knees shot, my heart damaged from a lifetime of stress I could never explain to doctors. I knew I'd never make the journey to British Columbia. This was goodbye, and we both understood it. I stood in that empty valley as full darkness fell, and I wept for the second time in 22 years. For 3 years, I kept my distance. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than keeping secrets from my wife, harder than watching them leave their ancestral home. But they needed space, safety, time to establish themselves without the risk of my visits drawing attention. I maintained contact through William, my First Nations friend who managed the land agreement. He'd call every few months with brief updates. Your research subjects are present. They appear stable. He never asked what I was really studying, and I never told him. Some silences are acts of protection. Then September 2022 arrived, and my phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was William, his voice careful and measured. "Your friends," he said, and I knew from his tone that he'd figured out they weren't animals I was studying. One of them is very ill. He keeps making certain sounds and pointing south toward where you are. I think he's calling for you." My hands shook as I wrote down directions, as I booked a flight to Vancouver that I couldn't afford, and my damaged heart probably couldn't handle. The journey took 3 days. Flight to Vancouver, rental car to a remote logging town, then hiking the final 15 miles with William as my guide. I was 71 years old, moving on knees that ground bone on bone with every step, stopping frequently to catch my breath and convince my heart to keep beating. William watched me with concern but said nothing, just adjusted his pace to match mine and carried most of my gear. We reached the Hidden Valley in British Columbia on the afternoon of the 3rd day. It was smaller than their Washington home, more enclosed, but beautiful in its isolation. Dense cedar and hemlock, a clear stream cutting through the center, steep ridges on 3 sides that made approach difficult and detection unlikely. And there, in a sheltered area beneath an overhang, I saw him. Tomas lay on a bed of ferns and moss, his massive body diminished in a way that broke something in my chest. His fur had gone almost entirely silver white, and his breathing was shallow and labored. But when he saw me, his eyes brightened with recognition and something that looked like relief. He made our old greeting sound, so weak I barely heard it, but unmistakable. I crossed the distance between us and knelt beside him, my own knees cracking in protest, and took his enormous hand in both of mine. The other community members gathered around us. 6 remained now. 2 had died of old age in the years since migration. But there was also something new that made my heart lift despite the grief. Tomas's daughter held an infant against her chest, fur still light and downy, eyes bright with infant curiosity. A baby, born here in this new territory. Proof that they'd found others. That genetic diversity had been restored. That maybe, possibly, they had a future after all. We sat together as the afternoon light filtered through the canopy. Thomas and I, 48 years of friendship compressed into silence because all the important things had already been said. His daughter brought water and food, showing me the same gentle hospitality her father had shown me decades ago. The infant watched me with fearless curiosity, reaching out tiny hands toward my face. And Tomas made a soft sound that I understood meant, "Good, safe, trust this one." As evening approached and the light turned golden, Tomas began to communicate his final message. It took tremendous effort, each gesture slow and deliberate, each vocalization requiring concentration that exhausted him. But he needed me to understand something he'd never fully explained before, something deeper than the hunting and the violence and the genocide. Using the language we'd built together over half a century, using drawings in the dirt and gestures and sounds, he told me the deepest truth. Before guns, he showed me, before organized hunting, there had been a different time. His people had tried to contact with early humans, with the indigenous peoples who first inhabited these lands. Sometimes it worked, brief periods of coexistence and mutual respect. But when European settlers arrived, everything changed. His ancestors had tried communication, had approached with curiosity rather than fear, and every time they were met with violence. But it wasn't just the violence itself Thomas showed me through increasingly tired gestures. It was what drove the violence. Humans couldn't accept that another species could think, could create, could have language and culture and consciousness. His people were too human-like to be dismissed as animals, but too different to be accepted as people. They occupied an impossible space that challenged human supremacy, human uniqueness, the idea that consciousness and intelligence belonged only to one species. So humans had made a choice, Tomas conveyed through drawings that showed his understanding of history spanning centuries. Easier to destroy than to acknowledge. Easier to hunt than to share the world. easier to deny existence than to confront the uncomfortable truth that intelligence, emotion, culture, and personhood existed beyond the human form. His people hid not just because humans were dangerous, but because being discovered would mean being destroyed simply for existing as proof that humans weren't alone in thinking and feeling and creating meaning. We hide, his gestures said with heartbreaking clarity, because you cannot accept that you are not alone in consciousness. We hide because recognizing us would mean recognizing that being human is not the only way to be a person. We erase ourselves so that you can maintain the lie of your uniqueness. We become invisible so you never have to confront the uncomfortable truth that we exist. He pointed to me, then to his chest, then to the infant his daughter held. You are the bridge. His meaning was unmistakable. You are the only human who knows we are people, not monsters or animals. You must protect them. You must remember us. You must carry our story even if you can never tell it. Someone must know we existed as more than legend. Tomas gripped my hand with the last of his strength, his massive fingers wrapping around mine. He vocalized my name sound one final time, that specific tone and rhythm they'd given me 47 years ago. I vocalized his name back, tears streaming down my face, my voice breaking. Then he closed his eyes, his breathing slowed, and at 6:47 p.m. on October 3rd, 2022, my friend of nearly half a century died peacefully with me holding his hand. They let me participate in the burial ritual, an honor rarely given to outsiders and never to humans. We carried his body deep into the British Columbia mountains to a sacred cave they'd found and consecrated in this new territory. They laid him with stones and specific flowers, the same tradition I'd first witnessed in 1976. The elder female who now led the community performed a ceremony of complex vocalizations that I understood were prayers, history, farewell, and promise. She acknowledged me by placing her hand over my heart, thanking me in their way for 48 years of protection and secrecy. Before I left, she showed me their new life, the marker systems they'd created, the hiding protocols they'd adapted, the ways they'd learned this new territory. They would survive here, but only by remaining completely invisible. She made me a promise again, the same promise I'd made decades ago. Never tell where they are, never bring others, never expose them, and keep their story alive in your heart. She conveyed through gestures I'd spent a lifetime learning to read. Someone must remember we existed as more than myth. I'm 73 years old now, recording this in November 2024, 2 years after Thomas died. I haven't returned to British Columbia. They need distance, safety, the space to live without even my well-intentioned presence drawing risk. But occasionally, when I hike familiar trails near my home, I find signs. A specific stone arrangement at a trailhead. 3 river rocks stacked in a pattern only I would recognize. A message that means we remember you. We are still here. Thank you. People ask me sometimes if Bigfoot is real, if I've ever seen evidence in my decades of wilderness work. They want proof. Photographs, DNA samples, bodies. They don't understand that proof would be a death sentence. They don't grasp that evidence would bring trophy hunters and government agents and scientists with tranquilizer guns and cages. Proof would mean extinction within a generation. The final chapter of a genocide that's been unfolding for more than a century. So I smile and say, I've seen strange things in the forest. Things I can't fully explain, but nothing conclusive. I maintain the lie because the lie keeps them safe. I carry their story in silence because some truths are too dangerous to speak, and some promises matter more than legacy or being believed, or going to my grave with people thinking I'm just another crazy old man with wilderness stories. I lived among Bigfoot for 50 years, learned their language, shared their homes, loved them as friends and family. And they revealed to me why they hide, a truth more devastating than simple fear of violence. They hide because humanity cannot accept that consciousness exists beyond human form. They hide because we destroy what challenges our supremacy. They hide because throughout history we've proven that we'd rather commit genocide than share the planet with other thinking, feeling, creating beings. If you're out there in the deep forests and you see something watching you from the shadows, something that doesn't quite fit into the categories of animal or human, I'm begging you to leave it alone. Don't pursue, don't photograph, don't tell anyone. Just walk away and let them be. They've earned their peace. They've survived everything we've thrown at them through sheer determination to remain hidden. The least we can do, the very least, is respect that choice and let them live. Some secrets aren't meant to be solved, just honored. Some beings deserve to exist in peace, unmolested by human curiosity or scientific ambition, or the desperate need to categorize and control everything we encounter. I kept their secret for 50 years, and I'll die keeping it still. This recording will never be released while any of them remain alive. It's insurance, testament, evidence that someone knew, someone cared, someone chose their survival over fame. And maybe, if I'm very lucky, 100 years from now when I'm long dead and they've found some way to thrive in whatever wilderness remains, someone will listen to this and understand what we lost when we chose dominance over coexistence. When we decided that being human meant being alone at the top of a consciousness, when we made the choice to erase rather than acknowledge. They're still out there, still hiding, still hoping we'll finally evolve enough to leave them in peace. I pray we do, because they deserve to exist, and we deserve to live in a world where consciousness wears more than one face, where intelligence speaks in more than one voice, where being a person means more than being human. That's the future Thomas died hoping for. That's the truth I've carried for half a century. And that's why, even now, I'll never tell you where they are.